Well, hello. Hello, Mr. Andrew.
Hi,
How
Lisa.
are
How
you?
are you?
I'm well. I'm well. We're knee deep into fall, autumn. Wait, did we have this fight last year? The seasonal fight?
Yeah, yeah, I do remember us having this conversation about how I was right and you're wrong. Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Okay, I see how today's going to go. Okay, then let's get right to our guest. Right to our guest. I'm excited as usual. I actually have so many questions, and I think her specialty is something that I know a majority of my clients, and I'm sure yours are really they're struggling with in a new and different way than they ever did before. So if you don't mind, let's stop talking about how right you are and let's jump right into to today's guest. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's do it. I love it.
Okay, fabulous. All right, so very excited to introduce and welcome to the Association Transformation family, Deanna Varga with Mayvin Global. I don't know, do we have a drum roll? Did you get sound effects yet?
I'm working on it. I'm working on the sound effects.
Oh my gosh. Deanna, I'm so sorry that you're not getting the best of Association Transformation, but we are excited to have you here. I mean, I know that you're in a very, very different time zone. We're very appreciative of your participation from Sydney, Australia. And what time is it for you right now?
It's about 7 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, so bright and early, rise and shine with Association Transformation. I know you from Maven Global. I know you from Association Answers in Australia, and I wonder where did Maven come from? Before we get into your superpower and your expertise, tell me a little bit about the company because it's such a great name.
Well, firstly, thanks for having me on the program. I have been listening to your podcast actually just about a year now, so I really enjoy listening to
Ooh.
the banter of the two of you. So yeah, great to be here, and thanks for the not the drum roll. Um, so we started actually today is our 6 year anniversary under Maven
Wow,
Global.
that
So yes,
deserves
we
a drum
did.
roll. Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And like any good person who speaks on revenue generation, this is my second time running my own company. But Maven, so partly I decided to grow up and get an agency to help me come up with the name. And I did feel like I was on the psychologist's chair as we were unpacking what my company name should be. And Maven means expert in a particular field, willing to share information at a particular point in time. And it also means well connected. So it's the spelling the spelling for Maven in the Australian or English spelling was already trademarked. So we went with the Y because it's traditionally Yiddish spelling. So it does exist. It's just a very old spelling.
Interesting. Well, that's amazing. Again, congratulations on 6 years. I love the name. I love the logo. And you all are really about helping organizations find all their paths to excellence, to revenue, and bringing that expertise to them. We came upon you through the Association Evolve publications and all of your writings on revenue diversification, turning over every stone possible, and really pushing yourself outside of the standard channels of revenue. What has that looked like in a post COVID world for associations and nonprofit organizations?
Well, it's interesting. We still have a lot of associations who are focused on their membership, which is okay to some degree, but many have realized that, particularly the smaller ones, the 2 and 3 revenue stream focus is not viable. And there's big risk in that. And so probably more than revenue has been the risk side, that understanding that reliance on a small number of often interconnected revenue streams is a really risky position to be in. And the other bit around that is this sense of not necessarily that we need to diversify our revenue, while that's an important component, but we don't understand the pathway to do that. And a lot of that is actually about, and we use the term commercial thinking. And, I grew up with migrant parents who both ran their own businesses, and I swore I was never going to run my own business. And as I said to you, this is the second time I'm doing it myself. So don't believe anything I say, really, is what I'm saying to you. But the point is, it's almost inherent in me. It's natural in me to think commercially because it's what I grew up with. And so things which I think are commercial thinking, or just the way I think, not necessarily commercial thinking, is not necessarily natural or the way people do things normally, if you like. And I think that has been one of the biggest challenges for associations, not only understanding that they really need to understand what that risk profile is, but how do I actually get from 2 or 3 revenue streams to accepting the risk that it's going to be uncomfortable for a certain period of time, but risk is positive, not just negative. And then how do I bring the team along on that journey? Because actually this is not an individual that does this. And even if it's led from the top, which it needs to be, it's a whole of organization mindset. So I don't know if I answered your question, but...
Well, I think you've highlighted, oh my God, so in that one sort of introductory paragraph, you sort of highlighted so many of some of the fundamental issues that are undermining associations' long-term success. And I think the risk thing in particular, it always blows my mind, amuses me, saddens me that the lack of, often what I see is the lack of sort of commercial or business acumen or commercial enterprise within the voluntary sector is driven by this, in the association sector, driven by this sort of risk adverse sort of culture. We mustn't do anything that's going to rock the boat, and yet everybody misses the irony, which is, but you're in such a high stakes environment when you're throwing everything pretty much into, one basket, which is your annual conference, and perhaps your secondary stream is your membership income. I think, and you're maybe radical if you've somehow got a third income, which you call sponsorship, so I think you've really, and it feels to me, I don't know about you, Lise, but it feels to me it's almost, in a UK context, I feel it's almost endemic in the association sector that risk or an inability to discuss and agree a shared appetite for risk feels like it's completely undermining so many other opportunities that are present to the association sector. I don't know. Do you get the same sense of that in the States, or?
I do, and yet I have so many questions around other channels. You use the term channels that people have explored and in some ways become equally dependent on. As I've started to work more in the scientific and medical association space, organizational dependence on journal revenue has blown my mind. And now that we are working towards an open source, open access model, that revenue stream is highly at risk. I guess I'm just wondering, there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a point at which you open yourself up to new revenue, and yet you don't become addicted to it at the same time. And maybe it's the need to disrupt ourselves, to not become complacent around any one revenue stream, no matter what percentage it is, a sponsorship, a discount program, an event. It almost seems like whatever the channel is, it's really about the dependency on it, or the how we take it for granted instead of the variety of them.
Interestingly, the International Congress and Convention Association, which is all about international meetings and associations, did some research earlier this year, and they asked associations, what's your main source of revenue? Not profit, but revenue. And I think it was 6 or 8% said their journal was their number one source of revenue, which is really interesting. And to your point, Andrew, 43% said their international congress, and then around 30% said membership. And so that shows, I mean, for me, I show this data a lot, because I say to associations, it's 6% say advertising and sponsorship together. Now, if an association has that revenue stream as their main source of revenue, again, it's not profit, it's revenue. And if that revenue stream is not even on your radar, then I say, should it be? Now, it doesn't mean it's right for everybody, but if an association is choosing it as their main income provider, why is that so? What are they doing to generate that? And then the profit bit is a whole nother question.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's new here? 10 years ago, when you would go to a conference and there'd be a session on revenue diversification, it meant an insurance program or a discount program or an affinity program, something you would plug in and basically resell to your members that you got a cut of. And there still are those programs. I mean, I think we all benefit from them. The most probably obvious in the United States are AAA or AARP or Costco, those things where you're benefiting from a discount that as a membership you're enjoying the economy of scale. What is innovation in revenue diversification? What's the new in revenue diversification?
That's a great question, Elise, because everybody wants to know what's the new shiny thing.
Yeah, give me the silver bullet already.
Well, let me tell you, here it is. No, well, this is really this is a pain point for most associations. Just back to your comment about insurance and third party plugins, if you like. What's new about those is data. So this is actually the silver bullet. And I've heard you talk many times on your podcast about data and trends in behavior, and I cannot stress enough. And I've even, in fact, Andrew, I think it was you, I'm going to say you were right, talking about a couple of weeks ago about how is there not a software solution that works for associations? It's one of the biggest pain points. But actually, it's not only the software, it's the culture of data entry. And so many associations have, for example, insurance or a third party relationship, which generates so much profit for them because they really don't have to do much. It's the money they make when they're asleep. But what are they doing with the data that's generated by that? And that is actually the silver bullet. It's being able to analyze the data. And I don't know many associations that have a business analyst within their business portfolio. So all of us are becoming business analysts, and we're all having to be smarter on how we interpret the data. AI is helping us interpret the data. But then what are we doing with that data? And that I kid you not is the silver bullet. In terms of, linked to that, I say to associations, before you look for that new shiny thing, coming back to that risk discussion that we had before, you have to have a risk appetite of some degree. Even an agreed position that you're not going to take risk is a risk appetite statement, because you need to look at what you're doing internally and what's your understanding of what is a commercial activity, what is not a commercial activity, what is commercial thinking, what is not commercial thinking. And I know another podcast that you talked about was around consultants and contracting. And one of the things which I think is a really good start to understand whether you think commercially is, how do you respond when someone sends you a proposal? How quickly do you engage with that piece of information, with that content? Do you understand that for someone to put together a proposal and respond to a brief is time, is money, is investment on their part? And actually, they're often giving you IP. Mm-hmm. So if you don't, and I'm going to use the word respect, if you don't respect those commercial relationships and the understanding, even getting back to somebody to say, we've got your proposal, we're looking into it, we'll get back to you by even if it's the end of the year, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that demonstrates a level of understanding of what commercial thinking is. And so back to, sorry, Elise, it's a very long answer to your question, but thinking about that silver bullet, if you don't understand what commercial thinking or how to operate commercially, that's actually your first gold mine. Because if you can start to think commercially, that's where it all starts from.
And there's no wrong in that. I think so many, especially when they're coming from the industry that's represented by the association or by the nonprofit, they think of this ivory tower of mission and purpose and vision and all of these statements of revenue and profit and commercialization and entrepreneurship. They take the wrong way. And I love how you've infused this into simply a vision of potential, of elevated impact through almost a professionalized way of thinking. I don't even know if it has to be, it's not necessarily profit focused. It's professionalized. It's running a business.
The business of doing business. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're for profit or not for profit. The business of doing business,
Yes,
transcends every industry and sector. So I think it's fascinating. Your take on. Lisa, I know that Lisa's she's.
I've got my little hand up. Yes. Well, I just don't want to. She mentioned data, and we touched on data really quickly. And I have I don't want to be provocative. I don't want to offend.
Oh,
but what I thought I heard Deanna, I don't know, suggest, promote, encourage was the collection of data for resale. Are you suggesting that an opportunity for revenue diversification is we sell the data related to our members' behaviors and usage and preferences? And is that an opportunity? Is that what you were saying?
It's a really good question. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
I didn't hear that. I must have.
Well, I was listening though.
Enough. Sorry.
It's a very good question. Some associations may choose to do that. I think in this age of data privacy, that's again, it's what's your risk appetite around that. One of the things about, as a business owner, you'll hear many, many times, or for entrepreneurs, you'll hear many times, I love what I do, and therefore I made money out of it. So if you're passionate about what you do, you can start to make money because you're good at what you do. Associations fundamentally are mission focused. They're purpose driven. People stay within associations because they are passionate about their purpose. Yeah. And I believe that you can make money when you are, that philosophy stands true for a not-for-profit as well. So I think if your data, in what I was actually referring to, Elise, is that you use the data within your association to help you leverage both your members, your stakeholders, and whether they be customers who aren't members, but they're engaged in your community, and you use that data for your own purposes. One of the things which, again, coming back to the risk appetite, but also about the people who engage with your association, they have to believe in what you're doing. And so your revenue streams have to be aligned, I believe, have to be aligned to your purpose. And that's where the profit, understanding the costs associated with that is also really important. Selling data can be seen as not aligned to your mission. And so I think that is not off the table, but you need to be there has to be a very clear reason for doing that. And sometimes revenue streams need to be justified around how is that aligned to your purpose.
I knew it was provocative. I just wanted to kind of get the official answer from the expert, from the Mayvin.
I think it's really interesting that, it's funny, Lisa, because when you described what sort of 10 years ago in the States, when you were talking about diversifying income, it was affiliate schemes was the kind of principal sort of go-to. It's really interesting because in a UK context, the affiliate schemes are extremely rare, extremely rare, outside of maybe insurance, indemnity, but other than that, anything kind of like you mentioned, AAA or Hertz rent a car or Hilton Honors, whatever. Don't get any of that. And I wonder actually if that's, and I'm talking in the UK context, that the mission focus is actually a massive prohibitor for for commercial attitude and for a spirit of enterprise, to the point where I often feel like associations push back at me and say, well, this is why we're here. It's not just to put, a square peg in a round hole. We're not just here to make money. We can't just do new stuff because it doesn't align with our mission. And more to the point, our members don't want it. And I have had pushback when I've said to people, have you thought about different ways in which you can engage members? And they have legitimately sort of challenged and said, but are we just, spreading ourselves so thin, and arguably presenting opportunities that not, an extremely small minority of our membership actually wants? And so, yes, it'll mitigate some risk, but ultimately it's not really having any impact. And I think sometimes people feel a bit overwhelmed by this concern of they have that, well, we're just, is this the business just to make money? We're not entrepreneurs in that sense. And at least is that
Well, I was thinking very similar, because especially during these last 2 to 3 years of disruption, people added. They didn't want people to go. They didn't want to upset people. They didn't want to devalue the value proposition with the loss of in-person. And as we've talked about before, there are now these overgrown gardens, and staff are spread very thin, and the value and impact of the mission is diluted to a certain extent. And I wonder, I noticed, Deanna, that there is feasibility studies, that you do a lot of feasibility reviews. And I wonder if before taking this step into understanding your risk appetite, if you first have to understand the value and commercial feasibility of the things that are already on your menu.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the things that we do is we look at where is the strategy, right? How do the revenue streams align to the strategy? Because you need to have a really strong strategic plan to start with. I'm seeing a lot more revenue streams or revenue diversification and words to that effect coming into strategic plans, which is fantastic. And it does start there. Then you need to decide, well, how are we going to make that real? So often strategic plans are around the 3-year mark. And it's, I really like that if revenue is sitting in that 3-year time frame, because either to improve a revenue stream or to explore a new one, 3 years, some of these do take time, and that's a really important element in return on investment, return on the objectives, return on whatever it is that you're trying to achieve in that revenue stream. And then it's looking at all the options. And sometimes it might take 3 years to investigate whether something is viable. Now, in today's age, 3 years is a long time, and a lot can happen. So things are much shorter. Yeah, that strategic plan is the first step. Then looking at what are the options is the second step, and then starting to investigate what's the feasibility of those different options, and align to that. The feasibility is that risk appetite.
As a strategic, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, can I step back a bit to the affiliate marketing component that you were talking about?
Oh, please.
And that it's not in the UK, or it's not heavily in the UK. I want to take
I'm sorry.
it
Did you want to tell Andrew that he's wrong or he's right?
No, I want to give Andrew an example to think about, which might help. Because merchandising for me is a real, and I've worked in retail and a little bit in wholesale, but merchandising is often seen as a revenue stream, which I don't necessarily agree with. But if you take something like, and I'm just going to use an example, I'm not saying they do this, it's a good example that comes down to base level, is if you take Australian Red Cross, for example, or the Red Cross, and they sell if you can say it, you can sell it, defibrillators. and they sell them from their, from their headquarters, wherever. And a Red Cross has a large volume of customers, right? So whether it's donors, whether it's sponsors, so business, they've got consumers. The key with affiliate marketing is to have a volume of people. And this links into your question before, Elise, about data. If Australian Red Cross was going to sell defibrillators from its main website to its database, there's a very low turnover. If they linked in with an Amazon or another retail platform through the API, through a third-party program, affiliate program, all of a sudden they get access to volume. Now, putting defibrillators in different locations, and I know it's the wrong example, but you get the point that I'm talking about. It's a massive distribution chain, and it's fundamentally core to their purpose. Mm-hmm. And again, they're making money at night, while they're asleep. So that, if that concept can be integrated into your association, then merchandise, for want of a better term, is a viable option and a good revenue stream. And again, it's using the data to support the mission. And it's not selling their data, but it is using that affiliate marketing process. Now, the thing is, that sounds like you're making money to sleep at night while you're asleep, but affiliate marketing does need to be managed and managed well. And once it's underway, it still needs to be manipulated and managed. But once it's underway is when you start to make the money, but you need that volume behind you.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the management of this, because so often the association staff are wearing multiple hats, and the same person who is doing membership recruitment and retention is also responsible for the partnerships and the sponsorships. And how do you avoid getting that muddy? If our purpose is membership, and yet in some cases a majority of our revenue is coming from advertisers, is coming from sponsors, is coming from vendors, how do you not muddy that, even just the optics of that?
It's a really great question. And this comes down to the fundamental question of whose responsibility is revenue generation. And actually, I think it's across the board. And, I worked in the cultural sector for quite a few years, and it was the CEO or director's role to manage the philanthropists. Now, they didn't procure the philanthropists necessarily directly. There was an account manager or a hunter who was identifying who the people were, or the high net worth individuals were, and then together they would be procuring those partners. But the director had in some cases, 85% of their time was focused on that nurturing and working with those high net worth individuals. So my point being, it's everybody's responsibility, but it does come back to that strategic plan. Where does revenue sit within your portfolio? And if you take a sponsor or a partner, for example, if you've got if you're doing an annual plan with that partner or a 3-year strategy with that partner, and you know what the objectives are for year 1, year 2, and year 3 of that partnership, then that helps you prioritize where you both sit. And I think this is where not-for-profits have the real advantage with partnerships, is because corporate partners know that you are resource poor generally, or you have a lot to do with limited resources. And so there can be open and transparent conversations around what is achievable within the time frame and what you both need to achieve. So the other thing about partners is we often, you need to think about what's the right allocation of time for each of those different partners. And again, this comes back to the strategic plan. And I'm not saying it's that simple, but it does need to be just like you plan what your marketing strategy is going to be, just like you plan what your resourcing is going to be for the year, understanding how you're going to generate those revenue streams, which resources need to be responsible for them, and then who's accountable for them. And the other way to manage this, Elise, is through KPIs key performance indicators, or OKRs is another term used, is what are the metrics around this? And we've heard many times what's measured is managed. And while that's a naff kind of saying, it's very true. And that helps determine where those priorities sit.
Well, there's so many layers to this. And I guess my only concern as the strongest advocate for strategic planning that you'll ever find, I wonder what's the real time to market that someone should be working in? If this is part of a 3-year strategic plan, maybe 5, which I don't do too many of those anymore, is there some way to be more nimble? I mean, can there be an incubator? Can there be an R&D department? Can there be angel investors or a VC mindset, something that allows organizations to be quicker in their consideration and their testing, their piloting of some of these programs?
There's yes to all of those. I think one of my let me call it issues, if you like, with associations is that we're slow moving, and it's an excuse. We're not slow moving in the corporate space. Why are we slow moving in the association space? Just because we have a board that we answer to doesn't make the commercial thinking any different. I think we've rested a little bit too long that it's okay to be slow moving. It's actually not. And I think that's one of the outcomes of the pandemic, that not all associations, but some are slow moving, many aren't. And the ones that are able to be nimble and think a bit faster, we're seeing more people having commercial roles within their portfolio. I'm coming back to that opening of commercial thinking, really also means responding quickly. And I use the proposal example just as it's a very good example to demonstrate how people think and act. Certainly in Australia, government is renowned for acting slowly, but there's no reason to be. Bureaucracy, approval processes, they don't have to be slow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and there's, again, so much here, and I hope organizations don't assume that dues revenue you mentioned 2 to 3 sources, and I don't know too many organizations that have a multitude of revenue sources. So this is something everyone needs to be talking about. This is something that has to be an intentional and strategic conversation. I hope people aren't waiting for that code red of profit and revenue and even membership deterioration to turn their attention to some of these important conversations. And you as a thought leader in this space, you're putting out, you guys have a new white paper being released in November, just next month. Very excited to see that and continue our exploration of these ideas and opportunities, because this isn't going away. And I can only imagine that as shifts in publications and membership and other technologies and commercial environments change, that revenue diversification will become absolutely mandatory. But we are so grateful to have had you. You're here on a very historic episode. I know you're a fan, but an historic episode in that Andrew was correct twice.
Well, look.
So, I mean, we should mark this down in history. I don't know that it will ever happen again, but Deanna Varga, CEO and founder of Mayvin Global, was here with us today. Pretty special day.
I think one of the reasons that you generate business off the back of the podcasts and I don't is because you make it sound like I'm incompetent. You really do. I'm getting it now. For the last three, almost 4 years, you've been undermining my credibility. Look at you. You put yourself on mute so people can't hear you laughing because you've been found out. Your mission driven is to just get rid of the competition.
I love it. How dare you? How dare you?
How dare you?
I love you. Come on. And next episode, I hope everyone can join us for victim syndrome. We'll be talking.
Wait, God.
Oh, stop.
Halloween.
This is about Deanna. This isn't about you. This is about Deanna.
Episode is in 2 weeks, but I tell you what, this is feeling pretty scary right now.
Our Halloween episode, yes, will be in 2 weeks. Deanna, thank you so much for joining us. This is necessary. This is important. We hope to have you back. I know there is no silver bullet, but some necessary conversations, I'm guessing, in 2024 and hopefully even before, as people adjust their budgets for the next year and come to terms with some of the realities around the channels that aren't necessarily delivering the profit that they had hoped. But thank you so much. Best of luck with the white paper. Please send it to us and we'll add it to the show notes from this podcast. Keep listening, and you're now and forever a member of the Association Transformation family. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
And we hope everyone will make us one of your favorites and find us wherever you get your podcasts. I guess I will be stepping back and letting Andrew run the show. Well, never mind. No, I'm not. That's not going to happen. Sorry.
Don't embarrass Deanna anymore. She's watched us have this domestic in front of her, right? She's sitting thinking, I just want this pain to end, right?
She said she loved the banter. All right, let's wrap this up. Deanna, thank you so much. We will see everyone next time. And until then, put your members and your mission first.